Today we're going to talk about solving algebraic equations. And it may not look like it, but this little drawing, this little sketch that I've made here is a sandwich. And I want us to think right now about the analogy between algebraic equations, and a sandwich. Up until now, we have been working on building the sandwich in math. We start with a number, we add another number, we subtract a number, we divide, we multiply, and we get our answer. And in this analogy, let's think of the answer as the total sandwich, okay? Our goal was to build a sandwich, and we put numbers together or pieces together, and we got a sandwich. In algebra, we are being given the sandwich, okay? We're being given the equation with what we usually call, what we up until now have called our answer. And we have to deconstruct or take the sandwich apart or undo what was done to the variable. In my analogy here, I'm going to let M represent the meat. And the meat in this analogy is going to be our variable. And guess what? It's mystery meat. Not because it's poor quality, but because we don't know what it is. And our job is to find what the meat is, or in our analogy, the value of M. And we see that a bunch of things have been done to it, okay? So first we have the meat. So this is the bread, and then the blue is the meat, okay? And then we have the yellow, which is the cheese. Okay, this is the cheese. And then we have some lettuce, or lechuga, as some of my friends call it. And then tomato. And then we have the other slice of bread. Looks like toast in this picture. Okay, so we have bread. Well, we added these layers in order, right? First we put the bread, then we put the meat, and on top of that, the cheese and the lettuce and the tomato and the bread. Well, if I want to take my sandwich apart to find out what the meat layer is, I'm going to have to do it in the reverse order. So I am going to have to undo each step. Each step. But I'm going to have to do it in the reverse order that each layer was added. And in math, we like to call it inverse, okay? We use inverse operations. Putting on the tomato and taking off the tomato are inverse. They're opposites, okay? And the order in math is Gemma. And the order here is just, again, meat, cheese, lettuce, tomato, bread. Okay, so we're going to have to do inverse operations. Taking off is the opposite of putting on, in the reverse order. Okay, the last thing we put on is the first thing we take off. I'm not going to slide the cheese out from under the lettuce and the tomato. I'm going to take the lettuce and tomato off first. So let's do that, okay? So let's do, here, let's kind of write it as an equation. So it's going to be meat plus cheese. You know, let's even make a nice little picture, okay? So let's do the meat, okay? And what are we doing? We're adding cheese. And then we're going to get this meat plus cheese if I wanted to. Okay, and then what are we doing? We're adding the lettuce. Okay, and then we have meat plus cheese plus lettuce. And then if I continue, I have plus tomato. And then we're going to get meat plus cheese plus lettuce plus tomato. And this is kind of messy. And then to make things easier, let's pretend I never put the bread on because I've run out of room. Okay, so this is, let's say, my sandwich. Let's say it's an open-faced sandwich. So this is my finished product. Okay, right here. But what I want to know is, what did I start with? Well, the best way to do that is to start with the sandwich, meat plus cheese plus lettuce plus tomato, and work backwards. So first I'm going to subtract the tomato. And what am I going to get? I'm going to get meat plus cheese plus lettuce. Well, I'm going to take the lettuce off. And I'm going to have only the meat plus the cheese. Then, when I take off the cheese, I am going to end up with the meat, and then I can see what the meat is. And guess what? In this case, the meat is ham. Okay, so this is actually a thing. This is called arrow language. And what it does is it makes a nice lineup of all my steps so that I can do the opposite in the correct inverse order. So let's take a look. The first thing that we did was we took away the tomato. Do you see that's the inverse of adding the tomato? Okay, and then the next thing we did was we took off the lettuce, which was the inverse of adding the lettuce. And then we took off the cheese, which was the inverse of adding the cheese. So we undid each step in the reverse order. And that's going to be super important for when we solve equations. Another way of looking at that is what I usually do in my classroom. If I were in my classroom in a regular school year, let's say I have a person who is starting a journey here. And we'll let the variable be S because S is actually the starting point. So I'm going to give this student, S could be for student too, I'm going to give this student a series of directions, and what are they going to do? They're going to follow my directions to get to their end point, okay? And that's like building the sandwich. That's like doing all your mathematical operations. So we're going to go down 2, I'm going to write this here, down 2, and then to the right 3, and then let's go down 4, and let's go left 4, and then let's go down 2. Okay, and this is where that takes us. Now, in order, and it went like this, right? In order to get back to our variable, to get the value or the starting point of our variable, what are we going to have to do? We are going to have to undo each step. So in order to show that, I'm going to put my arrow going this way. Well, what are we doing? We're going up 2, and then to the right, and obviously right is the opposite of left. So we're going right 4, we're going up 4, left 3, and then up 2. Okay? And look at what we have. Okay? So if you compare each step, right? We went down to the opposite is up 2. Right 3, opposite is left 3, down 4, up 4, left 4, right 4, and D2, down 2, up 2. But in addition to that, you can see the arrows are going in the opposite order. So again, the takeaway here would be, in order to solve equations, we have to undo, whoops, I have to spell it correctly. We have to undo each step in reverse GEMA order. Okay, and that's the thing that you're going to need to remember to solve algebraic equations.